Zara, al-Abi Jarada and others whose names are recorded in the book entitled Amal ul-Amal. During the Ottoman period the great Shia scholar, Muhammad ibn Maki was martyred. He is more famous as the second martyr. His books are still taught in the religious universities of Najaf and Qom. 2. Jazar, the governor of Akka near Jebel Emil repeated the evils of Hajj. After killing Sheikh Nasif Nasser, the chief of the cities of Emil, he also arrested and put to death a number of ulama and chiefs, including the great scholar Sayyid Haibatuddin Musa, Sayyid Muhammad al-Shukr, Sheikh Muhammad Usali, Sheikh al-Qatan and other jurists and doctors. It is mentioned in Ayan Shia 3 that Sheikh Qatan was a great scholar and was well versed in the science of ancient medicine. Sheikh Qatan was a contemporary of Sheikh Nasif Nasser Wali, the head of the ulama of Jebel Emil. Ahmad Pasha arrested Sheikh Qatan along with the ulama and notables of Jebel Emil, imprisoned them in Akka, subjected him to severe torture, and killed him by pouring molten iron on his head. Jazar ransacked the libraries of Jebel Emil. There were 5,000 books in the library of Qatan, and for a whole week the public baths of Akka were heated by burning these books. Only those who fled could escape the tyranny of Jazar. During Jazar's time, many scholars of Jebel Emil fled away. One of them was a poet named Sheikh Ibrahim Yahya who took refuge in Damascus. He was always distressed on this account and narrated the atrocities of Jazar. Since he had been an eyewitness to the incidents, he gave a graphic account of those hardships, and his elegies really infuriate those who hear them. One of those elegies, a lengthy one, begins as follows. The time that passes consists of joy and sorrow, and when a brave man has to suffer loss, it is better for him to be patient. How distressing it is for us to see our city as a place chosen for the revelries of Pharaoh. They have no contact with the organization of justice, and there is a large army in their house to commit oppression. Revolution of time intruded upon our affairs and destroyed all splendor of life. Contrary to expectations, wherever you cast a glance you see the murdered, the fugitives, the plundered ones, and chained prisoners. Alas, we find so many scholars wounded in different cities by the vicissitudes of time, and the wounds sustained by them are incurable. These scholars have been imprisoned and subjected to great inconvenience, and it is a very serious matter that a scholar is not respected. Alas, there are many respectable persons who, when it was morning, the oppressors put chains around their necks. Talking about such tragic circumstances, Shibli Nomani has said, scholars of religion are being made to wear chains. These ornaments are from the inheritance of Sayyid Sajjad. 4. After witnessing this carnage, the wise became senseless. People became so confused that they lost their reason. Each of their wound is still bleeding. When I saw that oppression had been rampant and there were no prosperous people, I left the land where I was vexed, because it seldom happens that a person should live at a place and remain happy while his neighbor is like a serpent ready to bite. Rulership is for Allah only, but it has fallen into the hands of a criminal who does not distinguish between lawful acts from the unlawful ones. There is a criminal and adulterer, who says that he is a virtuous person. But it is to be regretted that it is not possible to deceive Allah, because He recognizes the criminals, and He is in ambush for such people. These verses are a historical proof of the crimes of Jazar and are beyond any doubt or suspicion. They narrate things which make one shiver. The atrocities of the Ottomans were not limited to the Arab cities and to the Shias. They ousted Shias from all small and large government departments. They restrained the Shias from performing their special religious duties and did not allow them to perform their religious acts in Syria and the localities in which their number was small. These hardships continued for 400 years 1516–1918 AD. 1. Khazri, Al-Balad al-Arabiya wa Dalat al-Uthmaniyya, pg.400, 1960 edition. 2. The first martyr was killed in 786 AH during the period of Barkuk, the first king of Jaraxa. Burhanuddin Maliki and Ibn Abd ibn Jamaat Shafi'i had alleged that the martyr considered lawful the things declared by religion to be unlawful, e.g. drinking of wine. So, he must be executed. He remained imprisoned in the fort of Damascus for a year and was then put to sword, and thereafter his body was impaled and burned. Author. The magnum opus of the first martyr is Luma. The second martyr, Zainuddin ibn Nuruddin, has written a gloss on Luma, called Shar Luma, which has included the syllabi of all the Shia seminaries today. According to the author of Lao Lao, during the Ottoman rule, the second martyr was arrested right opposite the Great Mosque of Mecca, and he was kept as a prisoner in a house in Mecca for 40 days. Then he was transferred to Constantinople and put to death. His body lied unburied for 3 days, and after that it was picked up and cast into the river. Kadi Noor al-Shushtari, who is known as the third martyr, was the chief justice of the kingdom during the Mughal period. Sheikh Ahmad Sirhindi Muhaddid al-Thani and other fanatical Sunni scholars issued a verdict against the third martyr. Among his writings, Mayalish al-Mu'minin and Akak ul-Haq have earned international renown. Due to his writing, the book of Akak ul-Haq, approximately 40 Sunni ulama issued the fatwa that Kadi Noor should be given 100 lashes, made to drink molten lead, his tongue should be pulled out from behind his head, and then he should be beheaded. When he was lashed, he passed away only on the 15th strike, and the remaining lashes were delivered to his corpse. After that, a hole was drilled behind his head and his tongue was pulled out. Molten lead was poured on his head, due to which the head was burnt, and the brain came out. Later his corpse was thrown on the garbage heap on the outskirts of Agra. 3. Volume 1, pg. 4. Referring to Imam Zain al-Abidin. Shares. The Saudi government and Shias. Now we are in the 20th century, the century of democracy. Hajj and Jazar are no longer in power. Today we can convey our opinions to the media, we praise humanitarian groups and condemn those who are not. We are free to adhere to our beliefs. We live in the world of telecommunication and information. Man is undertaking expeditions in space and attaching ladders to the moon. Scientists are making their utmost efforts to ensure health and comfort for man so that he may lead his entire life comfortably with regard to his food, his clothing, his shelter and his movement. But the Saudi government still wishes that the people should lead a nomadic life. It is interesting to note that the Saudis, like the present-day nomads, rode camels and drank their milk, prepared their clothes from their wool hair, and made their shoes out of their skins. They sat on the ground in their tents and were faced with thousands of hardships. The Saudis married only their cousins and other girls of their tribe. Now their life has changed and taken the present shape. Their wealth increased after the petroleum boom. The Saudi elites now live in magnificent Arabian night palaces, enjoy all sorts of luxuries and travel by huge, air-conditioned cars and aircraft. Every day is a festival for them. In short, a revolution has taken place in the lives of the Saudis. But all these are temporal. They have not yet forsaken the mentality of nomadism and ignorance. Their intellect and morals, civility, and social intercourse with different tribes and races are the same. There is no change in their outlook. There is a lack of broad-mindedness among them. They are still not having cordial relations with other communities and tribes, and they remain stuck to their ancient attitude. This statement makes one thing clear, and that is the lack of order between the materialism and the spirituality of the Saudi state. There should either be the desert and the camels or civilized life and thinking, because separating intellectual civilization from temporal civilization amounts to contradiction. It becomes clear from the following proofs that although the bodies of the Saudis are in Wall Street, 1. Their thoughts are centered in Rub al-Khali. 2. A well-informed friend narrated to me the following surprising facts about Saudi Arabia. 1. If a Shia is the plaintiff, his evidence is not accepted, but the evidence given by anybody against a Shia is accepted. Thus, a Shia has to pay damages but does not receive compensation if his rights are violated. Indeed, the hardship would have been lesser if both the evidence against him and in his favor had not been accepted totally. What is surprising is that they think that Shias are liars, and the evidence given by the Shias is inadmissible. They make it a condition that the witness should be righteous, and when his righteousness is proved, his evidence is also proved, although a nomad may give evidence against a townsman, whereas the Hanbalis say the evidence of a nomad against a townsman is not acceptable except when the nomad is a Najdi and the townsman is a non-Najdi. 3. While it is mentioned in traditions that Allah has declared That in the organization of the unjust, the evidence of his friends should not be accepted on any account. 2. In Saudi Arabia a government Sunni judge is provided, like other judges, with a courtroom, salary, carpet and writing materials. However, a Shia judge does not get any of these. He retains only the title of judge, although in Kuwait, Bahrain, Iraq and Lebanon, the Sunni and Shia judges enjoy equal privileges. This Saudi attitude can only be attributed to bigotry and nomadic thinking. 3. The best work Saudi Arabia performs is in respect to masjids and graveyards and their repairs and maintenance, on which the state spends large amounts of money. However, this is only for Sunni masjids. The masjids and graveyards of Shias do not get any such monetary benefit, although masjids and graveyards are undoubtedly for Allah, the Quran, and Islam. Would that the Saudi government had not rendered assistance, but at the same time not destroy the graveyards of Asa and the Al-Matira Masjid. The Shias had obtained a formal permission from the governor of Ibn Jaludi district and from the municipal committee to construct the masjid and constructed it on their own expense. But the Saudi authority cancelled the permission, and after the masjid was constructed, they announced, Allah will build a palace in paradise for one who removes a single brick of the masjid. Hearing this, the overzealous believers arrived with spades and shovels and razed the masjid in a just few moments. For the Saudi government does not allow import of books written by Shias, although they deal with religious, historical, literary, philosophical, and other similar subjects, and do not have the least connection with Saudi politics. Also, the Shia authors of Saudi Arabia are given vile treatment by the government. Their only offense is that they love the descendants of the Prophet of Allah, and that they do so in compliance with the command of Allah. There is no denying the fact that restraining a nation from acquiring education results in the restriction of its spiritual life. It is for this reason that most governments and universities publish books in various languages and attach special importance to this task. They also sponsor students and send them to distant places to acquire knowledge. It is shameful that the Israeli Hadassah printing press publishes these books in Arabic, whereas the Saudi government prohibits it. The Holy Prophet said, "Acquire knowledge even if it is found in China." Imam Ali says, "The most learned person is he who increases the knowledge of others with his own knowledge." The Jews and others like them act upon this Islamic and human reality, whereas the people who say that knowledge is restricted to the desert of Najd and especially to the Wahhabis, and more specifically, to their fanatic chiefs, consider all others to be infidels and only themselves to be true believers. This matter becomes clear by the incident of Ibrahim Pasha and the Wahhabi chiefs at the time of their entry into the city of Daraya. This incident will be narrated soon. Even if we suppose that knowledge is restricted to the desert areas and especially to the desert of Najd, why should religious books, dealing with Islam, be banned, while the entry of the books published by the colonialists be permitted? Why should obscene books be available behind the Saudi shop windows, whereas the books and periodicals of Mu'tahids be banned? Why are those books that teach the people anarchy, mischief, and infidelity, preventing them from understanding the needs of life and from achieving perfection, be allowed entry into Saudi Arabia? The Saudi government granted complete freedom to the magazine Riyat ul-Islam to abuse the imams of Muslims and descendants of the Holy Prophet. Why has it published a verdict that shedding blood of Shia, as is permissible? Why did they instigate people to oppress Shia Muslims, while they believe in Allah, His Prophet, and the Judgment Day? On the other hand, why does the Saudi government ban the entry of Al-Irfan magazine, which has been campaigning against colonialism and corruption for the last 50 years, when it has done great service to the nation, the Muslims, and the Arabic language? This magazine has remained neutral between East and West, and its contents and policies have always been based on reason. Al-Irfan supports the independence of Palestine and Algeria. 5. It rekindled the spirit of freedom amongst the people. It is widely circulated in Cuba, Congo, Laos, and Angola, but its entry into Saudi Arabia is prohibited. Is it not a matter of shame that the Shias of Bahrain are treated by the British there 1,000 times better than Shias of Asa and Qatif are by Saudis? Is not a shame for Islam that the Shias of Bahrain And Saudi Arabia should be treated differently. Are the Shias of Asa and Qatif not entitled to demand that they may also be granted the freedom to perform their religious duties like the Shias of Bahrain? Is it not a matter of shame that Shias are not be entitled to construct their masjids and graveyards and should not be allowed to read the books and periodicals of their choice? I have said this and cursed the colonial rulers of the East and the West and their agents. I also curse those who have obliged me to say these things. The descendants of Saud rule in the name of Islam 6 and they have written La ilaha illa Allah, Muhammadun Rasulullah 7 on their national flag in bold letters. However, their behavior towards the Shias contradicts Islamic teachings. 8. Though the Shias of Lebanon, Iraq, Iran etc. are aware of the matter, they have chosen to feign ignorance and they think that there are no Shias at all in Saudi Arabia. Of course, we should bring these to the attention of the people of the East and West and tell them how the Saudi regime has adopted discriminative policies against our brothers in faith. What has astonished us more is that the Wahhabis follow Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and the sayings of Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, and the latter says that the pillars of Islam are 5. First, 2. Acknowledge that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. Second, prayers. Third, fasting in Ramadan. Fourth, Hajj, and fifth, Zakat. These pillars are the same which Shias believe. The Imamiyya scholars also say that one who abandons the performance any of these 5, while believing that it is allowed to omit them, is an infidel, and one who neglects, or lazy, about these things, is a sinner. And one who persists in this attitude and does not repent is liable for execution. The author of Al-Mughni 9 writes, one of the beliefs of the Khawarij is that they consider many companions of the Prophet and companions of companions to be infidels. They consider killing them and usurping their property to be lawful and believe that as a result of killing them they acquire proximity to Allah. Despite these beliefs of theirs, jurists do not consider them to be infidels, because it is argued that they performed ijtihad in what they say. On this basis, they are like those who consider Shias to be infidels and similar to the Khawarij, who consider some companions and companions of companions to be infidels and hold that their killing is lawful for the pleasure of Allah, and that though they are not infidels, they have certainly erred. Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab and Ibn Taymiyyah were also accused of heresy. Ibn Taymiyyah was imprisoned on account of his beliefs, and he died in prison. All al-Sunnah have said before, and they still say that the Wahhabi cult is heretical and has no connection with Islam. The views of Ibn Taymiyyah are contrary to those of the scholars of the Salaf, 10 the pre-Caliph 11 and post-Caliph after the 5th century, although he claimed himself to be the trustee of the Salafi Salihin. The ulama of al-Sunnah had rebutted the views of Ibn Taymiyyah and pronounced him to be an infidel. Wahhabism is based on the views of Ibn Taymiyyah and its followers are busy only in propagating his ideas. In the present age, the Saudi government is in the forefront in spreading the ideology of Ibn Taymiyyah and spends millions of riyals every year for this goal. Ibrahim Pasha. Like Shias, Wahhabis have also suffered persecutions because of their beliefs. They have also been killed. Pierre Courbedis writes in his book, Ibrahim Pasha 12. When Ibrahim Pasha defeated the Saudis, conquered their cities, and arrived in their capital Daraya, all Saudi commanders surrendered to him. He summoned the Wahhabi ulama, about 500 of them, and said to them, a delegation from among you will accompany me to Cairo and hold discussions with Sunni scholars to clarify the differences between your beliefs and those of the Sunnis. As ordered by Ibrahim, representatives of the two groups held discussions for 3 days and brought to light the differences between the two schools. During these 3 days, Ibrahim sat quietly and did not even go to sleep. On the 4th day he brought the discussion to an end and asked the head of the Wahhabis, do you believe that Allah is one and the true faith is one and that your faith is the only true one? The sheikh replied in the affirmative. Pasha said, you swine, what is your belief about paradise and its breadth? The sheikh replied, it is like the breadth of the sky and the earth, and it has been made ready for the virtuous. Ibrahim said, if paradise is so spacious, you and your followers will stay under the shade of one tree. Then what is the remaining area for, and why has Allah created such a big paradise? The sheikh and his followers cast down their heads in defeat. Ibrahim Pasha ordered his soldiers to cut off their heads. Followers of different religions pursue their religious obligations every time and in every place till an impediment emerges, and they have a special entity in the governmental organization. However, such a position does not exist in the Saudi government because, contrary to the expectations of Shias, who do not interfere with the affairs of the people and the policies of the state, they are prohibited from performing many of their religious rites. We all know that the policy of hatred, intrigue, and bloodshed is about to end, and the sun of freedom of opinion and faith is about to rise. Indeed, only that government, which is anxious for the well-being, security, and comfort of all the citizens of the state will survive. Someone has truly said that an illegitimate government is temporary whereas a true government lasts forever. 1. In New York. 2. The Rub' Khali is the sand desert encompassing most of the southern third of the Arabian Peninsula. The desert covers an area of some 650,000 square kilometers. Note of al-islam.org. 3. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal says, I am afraid of the fact that the testimony of a Bedouin should not be accepted against a villager. Mizan ash-Shirani, Chapter of Witnessing, Al-Mughni, Volume 9, pg. 67. Al-Mughni is a reliable book of the Hanbalis. 4. It is now 100 years. 5. It was during the War of Algerian Independence. After the Algerian independence from France in 1962, Ahmed Ben Bella became the first Prime Minister of Algeria. Alas, Palestine has still not gained independence from the clutches of the Jews. And it is attacked every day by Israel. But the Intifada movement of brave Palestinians still continues. 6. In order to propagate Wahhabism, they are sending millions of rials as donation and free Wahhabi literature to various Islamic organizations, mosques and madrasas all over the world. 7. Meaning, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. 8. Rida Aslan, the author of No God But God, writes in the chapter of An Awakening in the East. The facts of the alliance between Ibn Saud and Abd al-Wahhab have given way to legend. The two men first met as Abd al-Wahhab and his disciples were tearing through the Arabian Peninsula, demolishing tombs, cutting down sacred trees, and massacring any Muslim who did not accept their uncompromising, puritanical vision of Islam. They were expelled from an oasis where they had received shelter. The horrified villagers demanded that Abd al-Wahhab leave after he publicly stoned a woman to death. They later made their way towards the oasis of Daraya. Its sheikh, Muhammad ibn Saud, who was more than happy to give Abd al-Wahhab and his holy warriors his unconditional protection. This oasis is yours, Ibn Saud promised. Do not fear your enemies. Abd al-Wahhab replied with an unusual demand. I want you to grant me an oath, he said, that you will perform jihad against the unbelievers non-Wahhabi Muslims. In return you will be the leader of the Muslim community, and I will be the leader in religious matters. Ibn Saud agreed, and an alliance was formed that would not only alter the course of the Islamic history but would also change the geopolitical balance of the world. Abd al-Wahhab's holy warriors burst into the Hijaz, conquering Mecca and Medina, and expelling the Sharif. Once established in the holy cities, they set about destroying the tombs of the Prophet and his companions, including those pilgrimage sites that marked the birthplace of Muhammad and his family. They sacked the treasury of the Prophet's mosque in Medina and set fire to every book they could find, save the Quran. They banned music and flowers from the sacred cities and outlawed tobacco smoking and drinking of coffee. With death penalty, they forced the men to grow beards and the women to be veiled and secluded. The Wahhabis deliberately connected their movement with the first extremists in the Muslim world, the Kharijites, and like their fanatical predecessors, they focused their wrath inward against what they considered to be the failings of the Muslim community. Thus, with Hijaz firmly under their control, they marched north to spread the message to the Sufi and Shiite infidels. In 1802, on the holy day of Ashura, they scaled the walls of Karbala and massacred 2,000 Shiite worshippers as the latter were commemorating Muharram. In an uncontrolled rage, they smashed the tombs of Ali, Hussein, and the Imams, giving particular vent to their anger at the tomb of the Prophet's daughter, Fatima. With Karbala sacked, The Wahhabis turned north toward Mesopotamia and the heart of the Ottoman Empire. Only then did they get the attention of the Caliph. In 1818, the Egyptian Khedive, Muhammad Ali 1769–1849, at the behest of the Ottoman Caliph, sent a massive contingent of heavily armed soldiers into the peninsula. The Egyptian army easily overwhelmed the ill-equipped and poorly trained Wahhabis. Mecca and Medina were once again placed under the care of the Sharif, and the Wahhabis were forcefully sent back into the Najd. By the time the Egyptian troops withdrew, the Saudis had learned a valuable lesson. They could not take on the Ottoman Empire on their own. They needed a far stronger alliance than the one they had with the Wahhabis. The opportunity to form just such an alliance presented itself with the Anglo-Saudi Treaty in 1915. The British, who were eager to control the Persian Gulf, encouraged the Saudis to recapture the Arabian Peninsula from Ottoman control. 2. Assist them in their rebellion, the British provided regular shipments of weapons and money. Under the command of Ibn Saud's heir, Abd al-Aziz 1880–1953, the plan worked. At the close of the First World War, when the Ottoman Empire had been dismantled and the Caliphate abolished, Ibn Saud reconquered Mecca and Medina and once again expelled the Sharif. After publicly executing 40,000 men and reimposing Wahhabism over the entire population, Abd al-Aziz ibn Saud renamed the Arabian Peninsula the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The primitive tribe of the Najd and their fundamentalist allies had become the wardens of the sanctuary, the keepers of the keys. Almost immediately, the sacred land where Muhammad had received the gift of revelation miraculously burst forth with another gift from God. With abundant petroleum reserves, the tiny Saudi clan suddenly gained dominion over the world economy. They now felt it was up to them to respond to this blessing from God by spreading their puritanical doctrine to the rest of the world and purging the Muslim faith once and for all of its religious and ethnic diversity. The Muslim Brothers arrived in Saudi Arabia at an opportune time. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia remained the sole Muslim country in which the ulama had not lost their grip over the society. On the contrary, Saudi Arabia was both an utterly totalitarian and uncompromisingly Wahhabist state. Here there was no debate whatsoever between the modernists and the Islamists. Nationalism, pan-Arabism, pan-Islamism, Islamic socialism, none of these vibrant and influential movements in the Muslim world had a significant voice in the Saudi kingdom. The only doctrine that was tolerated was the Wahhabi doctrine. The only ideology is Islamic fundamentalism. Any deviation was violently suppressed. Hoping to curb Nasser's growing influence in the Muslim world, the Saudi monarchy opened its arms to the radicalized Muslim Brotherhood, not just to those who had been exiled from Egypt, but also those from other secular Arab states like Syria and Iraq. The Saudis offered all the money, support, and security that the group needed to fight back against secular nationalism in their home countries. But the Muslim Brothers discovered more than mere shelter in Saudi Arabia. They discovered Wahhabism, and they were not alone. Hundreds of thousands of poor workers from all over the Muslim world began pouring into Saudi Arabia to work the oil fields. By the time they returned to their homes, they were fully indoctrinated in Saudi religiosity. In the fall of 1996, a group of ethnic Pashtun religious students from the poorest, most conservative, and the least literate provinces of Afghanistan and Pakistan rolled uncontested into Kabul, hoisting their trademark white flag representing purity. The students stormed the United Nations compound where the Afghanistan's president was hiding, dragged him into the streets, pummeled him to death, and, at dawn, hung his bloated body from a lamp post. In this way, the Taliban made its fearsome presence known to the world. The Taliban first entered the global stage, along with a massive contingent of Muslim militants, known as the Mujahideen or those who wage jihad, from the Middle East, Far East, Central Asia, Southeast Asia, North Africa, and East Africa, who from 1982 to 1992 were recruited and armed by the CIA to take part in a jihadist insurrection against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. With Saudi funding, the Mujahideen were sent to Pakistan, where, with the assistance of Zia al-Haq's fundamentalist regime, they were trained in terror tactics and indoctrinated with a militant combination of Shah Waliullah's religiopolitical ideology and Wahhabism's radical Puritanism, all under the supervision of the then CIA chief William Casey. The United States had long considered Wahhabism to be an important ally in the great game being played out against godless communism. In fact, to solidify Saudi support, the United States encouraged wealthy Saudis with intimate ties to the government and royal family, like Osama ibn Laden, to finance and oversee the insurrection in Afghanistan. Called freedom fighters by the CIA, and compared to America's founding fathers by President Ronald Reagan, the combined force of the foreign Mujahideen fighters and the Afghani and Pakistani religious students forced the Soviet army to pull out of Afghanistan. They also ushered in the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. Their mission in Afghanistan accomplished, the triumphant Mujahideen took their Pakistani training, their Saudi fundamentalism, and their American weapons back to their home countries in order to launch their own jihad in places like Palestine, Chechnya, Morocco, and Indonesia. The Taliban returned to their homes in the Pashtun regions near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border to continue their religious education. And Afghanistan, abandoned by a United States flushed with victory in the Cold War, was left in the hands of lawless warlords who ran the country like competing mafia gangs, killing, torturing, and raping indiscriminately in their quest for control. In 1992, when the Taliban decided to reunite under the leadership of their spiritual teacher, Mullah Omar, and retake Afghanistan, this time from the hands of the feuding warlords, they were again supported by the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan. With the assistance